We often treat the pursuit of mental well-being like a multiple-choice question. On one side, we place the ancient contemplative traditions of Eastern philosophy. On the other, the clinical, evidence-based practices of modern Western psychology. But separating them creates a false divide. Look closely at both traditions, and you find they were built to answer the exact same agonizing question: why the human mind refuses to stay quiet. Today, clinical psychology has a specific vocabulary for this baseline state of human suffering. We use terms like rumination, deep chronic anxiety, and clinical depression to describe a mind at war with itself. Yet millennia before the first therapist's couch, the authors of the Bhagavad Gita were categorizing these exact same agitated states. They mapped out rajas, the restless energy we now recognize as anxiety, and tamas, the heavy lethargy that mirrors depression. Neither framework tells the whole story on its own. To fully address why we suffer, we need the ancient subjective map of our inner experience layered directly on top of the modern objective map of our biological mechanics. The ancient introspective approach, documented in texts like the Upanishads, started with a primary goal: separating the eternal, observing self from the transient physical body. Over time, this philosophy evolved into highly practical tools. The text known as Patanjali's Yoga Sutras is a functional, cognitive map of exactly how the mind operates. At the center are vrittis, uncontrollable fluctuations of our thoughts. To manage these, practitioners defined the antakarana, or inner mind. This includes the Ahamkara, the ego. Agony occurs when the ego identifies with these thoughts, tangling itself in the noise. This map perfectly diagnosed the subjective experience of distress. But early practitioners lacked the physical instruments needed to measure the biological toll this tangled state takes on the human body. That is exactly where modern science steps in. Today, clinical researchers are investigating that same mental suffering, but they rely on objective biological mechanics to track the damage. Scholars like Richard Davidson and Daniel Goleman have spent decades measuring the clinical impact of ancient contemplative practices on modern brains. Their work centers on neuroplasticity. This is the brain's structural ability to reshape itself and rewire its circuits in direct response to sustained mental training. Through brain imaging, we can observe specific anatomical changes in long-term meditators. Regular practice physically increases gray matter density while simultaneously shrinking the amygdala, the brain's primary stress response center. However, modern science also establishes crucial medical boundaries. While meditation alters long-term mental traits and builds resilience, it is not a standalone cure for severe acute psychiatric illnesses. By treating the human brain as adaptable physical hardware, the modern map provides the vital biological boundaries and mechanisms that the ancients simply couldn't see. When we place these two approaches side by side, they stop looking like competing ideologies and start functioning as complementary frameworks. The modern clinical map excels at diagnosing acute illness, treating the biological hardware, and ensuring our functional survival in a high-stress world. Meanwhile, the ancient contemplative map treats the subjective software. It guides the mind past mere survival, offering a path toward the equanimity that comes from detached observation. A complete approach to mental well-being uses both mechanisms simultaneously. We can leverage modern insights to physically rewire the stress response of our amygdala, while applying ancient practices to quiet the constant fluctuations of our thoughts. This creates a state where the biological hardware is calm and the cognitive software is clear, allowing a person to navigate daily life without being consumed by the impulses of their own ego. But merging these fields leaves us with a persistent question. If science can successfully map the exact neurons of our anxiety, and ancient practice can successfully quiet the frantic stream of our thoughts, when the mind finally goes completely still, who or what is the entity left watching it all? Achieving true freedom from mental suffering might not require choosing a side at all. It requires us to look through the microscope of the West and into the introspective mirror of the East.